7 o'clock, Councillor.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Declare the meeting in session. Good evening, everybody. Thank you, all the members of the public, councillors and officers who are joining us for today's meeting. We do have a couple of people who are actually not on the committee, and they'll be speaking in public participation. Please be aware that the council is live streaming this meeting direct to our YouTube channel. Can you all hear me okay? Fine. I'd just like to highlight some key points of the meeting format. Councillors looking to speak will be invited to do so by the chair, and we need to come up to the nearest microphone, and there's two there, at the front to speak, unless you have a microphone on your table. Okay. No? Okay. For councillors that have microphones, the sound technician will be unmuting your microphone when you're invited to speak. If councillors have any concerns about hearing or seeing others in the meeting, please let the chair or a council officer know straight away. If anyone uses hearing aids, please make sure to connect to the hearing loop for the best audio quality, and I can assure you it works. If anyone is joining the meeting via Zoom, there will be a noticeable time delay, so we must be mindful of this when interacting with them and allow them to hear what is being said and respond. I must also run through a few key health and safety points for those physically in the meeting room. We require you to wear face masks for this particular meeting because we're still working underneath the old regime until we decide how we're going to conduct our meetings in the future. The fire exits are via the main entrance, which is behind you there, and that side entrance, and down the stairs and out that way. So there's 3 ways of getting out of this particular room. The assembly point is out on West Down Road to the east of the building, and if you're able to, up towards the unmade section of Wilmington Road. Don't go over to the pub. If in the venue, please limit your touching of shared surfaces as best as possible, and I can confirm that tables, chairs and other such surfaces and facilities have been cleaned ahead of the meeting. Please remain seated unless you're invited up to speak or need to take a comfort break. The facilities are by the main door. You go down there and turn right and you'll find the toilets there. We're moving around the room. Please be mindful of keeping a comfortable distance from others. I would ask that participants looking to leave the meeting wait until the end of an agenda item to limit distraction to other participants. Voting will be done by a show of hands. Please be sure to make sure your hand is clearly lifted and keep it up until the chair has called the vote. If the meeting goes into confidential session, which it will this evening, a short 2-minute break will be allowed to allow members of the public to leave and to stop the live stream feed. Could I also ask you to make sure that if you wish to speak, that you clearly indicate, because you're all a long way away and I can't even see your name card, so I hope I can remember all your names this evening. Members of the public present in person or via Zoom, members of the public are invited to participate in one of 3 ways: remotely via Zoom, physically in the meeting, or by submitting a written statement to be read out. Those members of the public looking to participate via Zoom, I don't think we've got any tonight, have we? No, okay, that's good. Members of the public physically in the meeting room will be invited to speak next. Please raise your hand to show you wish to speak, and the chair will invite you to come to the microphone in order. Finally, a council officer will read aloud any written statements that have been submitted. No written statements this evening? No, good, thank you. Public participation is limited to a maximum of 4 minutes per person and must be relating to an item of business on the agenda. You do not need to state your name when you start speaking if you do not wish to, but we would ask you to clearly state which agenda item you're speaking about. To all present, please remember to show respect to others in the meeting, avoid interrupting where possible to enable others to follow the meeting. If any councillor feels concerned about any aspect of the meeting or discussion, please clearly state point of order. The chair will then gesture for you to elaborate. If anyone present is felt to be behaving unacceptably, they can be ejected from the meeting by resolution of the council members. Thank you for listening. On behalf of the council, I'd like to thank everyone for attending this Town Council meeting. Any questions on that? No? Okay, we'll go straight into the agenda. Has everybody read the minutes? Because there's quite a lot of information at the start of the actual minutes themselves. Okay, item 1, apologies for absence. At the moment I have 2 apologies, Councillor Jean Cash and Karen Singleton, who's on holiday. Are there any others that are known? No? Okay, thank you. Disclosure of interest. To deal with any disclosure by members of any disclosable pecuniary interests and interests other than pecuniary interests as defined under the Seaford Town Council Code of Conduct and the Localism Act 2011 in relation to matters on the agenda. Are there any disclosures? Yes, Councillor Honeyman. And then
Thank you, Chair. Item 13, regarding the SCP, even though I'm on that as a rep at the moment, but the item discussed is not an area I get involved with, so I wouldn't really want to get involved with this particular. It wouldn't be relevant or fair on the council or the SCP if I took part in that discussion or voted, so I shall lead the meeting at that stage.
Right,
thank you, Chair.
Very much. Councillor Walraven.
Thank you, Chair. I'm the Council Representative and Trustee for Bishop Stones United Charities, member of the Seaford Bonfire Society and also members of the Seaford Rotary Club. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? No? Okay.
Mark?
Sorry. You're on my side, I can't see.
I'm not sure if it's an actual disclosure of interest, but I did have a discussion with Kevin yesterday about the SCP.
Yes.
So I don't know whether I should include that as a declaration of interest or whether it's just a conversation.
Are you involved in it?
Not at the moment, no.
No, okay, that's fine. Okay, item 3, public participation. I know we have one member of the public, who's the chairman of SCP, who wishes to say a few words.
Hi, I'd just like to say a few words about the item 13 on the accounting arrangements for the community partnership. First of all, I want to thank Karen for preparing this clear paper, and then I want to say 3 things. The first thing, I see the paper as part of the long-term relationship between the town council and the partnership, going back about 15 years. We've done a lot of good things together, and I see this paper as part of that. The partnership was involved with the Heritage Trail, 1,500 trees we've planted, the beach garden, the sunken garden. We made a significant contribution to the neighbourhood plan, and of course the shoal. So that's the first point. Second point, I'd like to agree with the recommendations in the paper. There are 3 recommendations, talking about financial administration only, and then it defines the only, as my understanding, to mean excluding procurement. And we've no desire to include the town council, Tony Jackson, or anybody else within the procurement. The only role of the town council would be the representative on the steering group, and the steering group will decide which consultants should be employed. Of course, making the very bold assumption that we actually get the money, which we just don't know. Yep, that was fine. The second recommendation about delegating power to the Town Council, the RFO and the Chair of Financial General Purposes Committee. Yes, that is definitely needed. We prepared the bid in real record time, about 7 days we prepared the bid in. We consulted, Adam knew what was going in before it went in, but he had about half a day to comment. So that wasn't the way we'd like to do business normally, but we thought we should do it in order to try to get the money. Also, there's still no funding agreement with East Sussex County Council. If we get the money, we don't know whether it will all be paid up front, whether part of it will be paid up front and paid as we're going along, and how much will be retained to the end. So we don't know the cash flow arrangements. And the cash flow is very important and a very strong reason why we want the accounting to be done by the Town Council. What was new about the bid, in my experience, is we're actually invited to estimate the administration cost, and we're allowed to include the administration costs in the costs for the bid. Previously, when I've been involved, that has not been the case. We've got £5,500 for trees, and it was for trees. It wasn't for the Town Council doing the accounting. So this seems to be a new approach. So that was the second point I wanted to make, supporting the proposal. Third point is I see it as important within looking at the future relationship between the Town Council and the community partnership. We need to be clear what the relationship is and probably define it rather more than we have done in the past. But a key external factor is it looks like this type of bid, this type of funding, with the EU finishing for us, it will be a growing trend, and it will be opportunities for the town to get some hands on some money. So it's important that we're geared up to try to get our hands on such money to help the town. And I think that... And also, I'm very happy to agree to do a presentation to the full council at its August meeting, when I will pick up some of the points I've just made, like clarifying our partnership with STC. What does that mean? What can the partnership do that is most useful for the Town Council? And that fits in with the strategic plans of the Town Council. I don't know when the drafts are going to be available, but I think that's a key relationship for us to make sure we work with. And we'll talk about, I'm just about to finish, Mark, the specific plans we have for 2021 and 22. So they were all the points I wanted to make. If anybody wants to ask any questions about what I've said or what's in the paper, I'd be happy to answer them.
If you've got any questions, I think this is an appropriate time to ask them, because Mr. Blackburn wants to leave the meeting when we go into confidential session. So if you have any questions, if you could ask them now, please. It's a bit out of context, but it's the best way, I think, of doing it. No questions?
Well, there's 50 invoices. It says there's about 50 invoices.
Yep.
Is that just spread over the time? Will there be like a lump of like 30 invoices?
Spread over the time.
Right.
Basically receiving some money, then paying some money out. I would expect to pay out monthly to consultants and compare with the milestones of what we've done. We would look at what we've done. Promised we would then say yes, payment is appropriate.
Right.
So
yeah, so we're saying 7 a month, roughly.
Not money at all.
Okay, I think we should take up Mr. Blackburn's offer of a presentation at full council. We could put that on the next agenda, please, Town Clerk. Is everybody okay with that? Right, okay, thank you very much.
Thanks.
We're supposed to have Councillor Adeniji, but he doesn't seem to have turned up at the moment. Yes, you drop your mask. Yes, sir, Councillor Honeyman.
Just because I'm surprised Mark hasn't, I'm surprised Keith hasn't publicised the AGM tomorrow for the SCP while he's here. So just let everyone know, everyone's invited, all councillors are invited, and you've all had an email from yourself, haven't you, about the AGM. So I think all councillors have. If they want to get the link, just reply to that, and then that should be fine. So,
Okay, thank you. You okay then? Okay, that's the public participation then. Now we now go on to item 4, which is grants applications, which is starts on page 9 of your minutes. I think most of you were at the meeting when we discussed all these items, and we did come to some resolutions, and they've been printed in the schedule that is on page 11, and we actually did make a small saving on the overall one. So what we're doing at the moment is to consider and approve grant request detailed in Appendix A and B as recommended by the working group. I know that there's one or two councillors who already noticed their intention to speak. I think Councillor Borman, would you like to?
Thank you, Chair. Bishopstone Charities, Edric House is in Seaford Neighbourhoods Plan as a heritage asset. We initially agreed only to give them £1,000 out of the £3,000, but as we have some extra money left, I'd like to propose that we give an additional £1,000 to them, because we, as a town council, should be protecting and supporting our heritage assets. Thank you.
Yes, in fact, we made a saving of £1,086, I believe, in the overall budget. So anybody else like to speak on that at all? Okay, so any questions on the overall spend that we've suggested from the working group? None at all?
Sorry, Mark, just quickly. I think that Councillor Borman's made a proposal there, so it might need a seconder as well. That's
no, I was just going to deal with that.
Okay, cool.
So we've had a slight recommendation then from Councillor Borman. If we could deal with that one first, that we grant an additional £1,000 to the charity. Yes? You're proposing? You're seconding? All in favour? Anybody against? Any abstentions? Okay, well, yes.
One abstention.
Are you voting for, Councillor Meek? Sorry? You're voting for? I'm abstaining. Abstaining. Thank you. Okay, so that's carried. So with that addition then, to consider and approve the grants request detailed in appendices A and B as recommended by the working group, we could have somebody to propose that, please. Thank you. And somebody to second it, Councillor Borman. All those in favour? Anybody against? Any abstentions? Okay, that's carried. Thank you very much. The next item on the agenda is item 5, which is the finance report, and that is on pages 14 to 17. The purpose of the report to advise the Committee of Receipts, Payments and Bank Reconciliations for March, April, May and June 2021. And the Finance and General Purpose Committee is recommended to note the contents of the report. One slight change, the June bank statements have now been verified against the council account, so they're okay as well. At the time of writing, they hadn't been verified, but they have been done since then. So just one tiny minor amendment. Are there any questions on the statements? No? So could we have somebody to propose that we note the contents of the report? Councillor Raven, seconded. Councillor Reid, all in favour? Anybody against? That is carried. Thank you very much. And then we go on to, I think A and B are together, aren't they? Lucy, they're both together. Yep. So we've got item 6, Finance General Purpose Committee Year-End Income Expenditure Reports, which starts on page 33. And again, to
Sorry,
present the
sorry.
2020...
Sorry, Chair, point of order. Sorry, we didn't make it crystal clear in the reporting, but 5B is actually a separate report with a separate motion to note.
Sorry?
5B, we need to note the contents of 5B.
Does it? Oh, sorry, I thought they were both together.
No, but they're actually separate in the
Are we
agenda
on
papers.
page
which
18?
is
Right,
page,
let's go back.
page 18, yeah, page 18, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, 5B, to note the contents of the report. If somebody could propose that. Councillor Walraven, seconded Councillor... Yes, you wish to speak, Councillor Borman.
Thank you, Chair. Page 24, 4258, which is the 1, 2, 3, 6 one down, seasonal beach hut revenue expenditure. It's at 380%. Can I question why that is such a difference to what was budgeted for, please?
Finance Manager.
I'll have to double check, but I'm thinking because we didn't budget for income, we didn't also budget for expenditure, so the income would offset that expenditure.
In fact, as far as I'm aware, the beach huts are booked up to the end of the season at the moment, so, you know, there's quite a good income coming in from that. So, okay. So, we need somebody to second the motion. Councillor Argent, all in favour? Okay, anybody against? That's carried. Sorry about the omission.
It's all right, no, right.
Now we can go on to item 6.
Yeah, we can.
On page 33.
Yeah.
And again, we're required to note the contents of the report. As the summary says, it's been a very difficult year for the Town Council, and the F&G budget has been actually the least affected over the COVID pandemic period. So, you know, that's really good news, I think, from that point of view. You can see all the figures there. I always get tongue-tied, so I'm not going to read them out. I hope you've all read them. Are there any questions? Okay, no questions. So could we have somebody to propose that we note the contents of this report, item 6? Councillor Borman, seconded Councillor Payne. All in favour? Anybody against? Any abstentions? Carried. Thank you very much. Item 7, Town Council's direct debit register, and we start that on page 39. And the purpose of the report to review and approve the Town Council's current direct debit register, and to review and approve the Town Council's current direct register is what we're required to do this evening. So you've got it laid out in front of you. Are there any questions on the contents of this report? Councillor Walraven.
Sorry. It's just a clarification, really. I think I might know the answer. But on the business stream, Salts Recreation Ground and cottage waste water, and the same with the water bit. Are we paying for the water for that cottage, and do we get it refunded by LDC?
That's right, yeah. We do pay for that, but we do recharge LDC for the cottage.
I see. It's just this is easier way to do it. That's
And
it. Just
I think we
wanted to.
back charge,
Thank you.
don't we?
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, so to review and approve the Town Council's current direct debit register, could we have somebody to propose that we accept that? Councillor Borman, seconded by Councillor Walraven. All in favour? Anybody against? Any abstentions? Okay, then that's carried. We go on now to item 8, which is item 8, cashless parking donations, page 42. Purpose of the report, to seek approval of the methods for enabling online payments through the Town Council's website. There are 3 recommendations: to note the contents of the report, to approve using Stripe to enable the receipt of online payments through the Town Council's website, and to approve the associated cost of setting up Stripe on the Town Council's website. Does the Town Clerk like to comment on this at all?
Oh, I just did what Councillor Walraven did. Mask and glass is not a good mix. Anyway, but thank you very much, Chair. I'd like to thank Karen in her absence for this excellent, clear and comprehensive report. I know that councillors will be aware, councillors' officers have for some time been grappling for that with the issue of how do we address the fact that people don't pay much with cash anymore, they tend to do things cashlessly. Originally it was looking at, as it said, cashless parking donations, especially thinking of Southfield Barn and donations, because we already had a facility for cash facilities at Southfield Barn. So to enable people to donate their cashlessly too would be a massive step forward. But looking into the work, as the report makes clear, essentially to be able to do that at all, we need some sort of appropriate cashless payment system. And from the work that the officers have undertaken, they're basically recommending that the Stripe system is the one that's used. And so in the report, we're recommending a use of Stripe for this purpose, and also obviously there are costs with any online cashless system that you would use, so the costs are within the report, and councillors are also asked to approve those costs as well. Happy to take any questions or comments from the floor. Thank you.
Okay, if you look under the financial appraisal under item 2, you can see what the costs are in setting up this scheme.
Yeah.
Under 2.1, there's an estimated cost of £525. And under item 2.2, there's the Stripe charge of 1.4% plus 20p for European cards and 2.9% plus 20p for non-European cards. Fees deducted from the income received. If you've got a comparison, PayPal charges 2.9% and 30 pence per transmission. Do we think we'll recover these costs?
Well, I mean, I guess we'd have to hope that not too many donations are below 20p, if you like, because they'll obviously not be covered. But basically, as I say, that's why we're going with Stripe, because it looks like about the most cost-effective one we were able to find in doing the research.
Yes, sir. Councillor Reid.
Thank you, Chair. Do you think it would be a good idea to put something on by the QR code to suggest an amount which would be appropriate to give, and also say that obviously to have this facility, the council has a cost in that, so that people realise that if they did give 20p, they wouldn't be they'd actually be causing us a problem rather than giving a donation. I mean, would it be good to have a suggested minimum donation of 50p or whatever it might be, £1, I don't know, because it needs to cover our costs, as you've just said, Chair.
Yeah. I think we take that into consideration.
Yeah,
Councillor Borman.
Think about appropriate signage, clearly.
Sorry, ladies first.
Thank you, Chair. There's obviously the additional the start-up costs to it, just for this. If you then decide that it is working well and then put it across to the events things, are there going to be additional costs to set those up?
Well, I think that we'll make sure that there's clarity for councillors in that, in any further communication. If we discovered any additional costs for expansion, we would seek councillor approval for those additional costs. My understanding is that the setup happens once, and so I didn't anticipate that. But if there were additional costs, we'd come back to councillors for further approval.
Councillor Reid and then Councillor Honeyman.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I can see there are opportunities here for things beyond Southill Barn. For example, Christmas Magic, rather than having cash pots seeking donations, a QR code or two or three QR codes on the main street and money would come in that way, possibly also Armed Forces Day, or I think there are numbers of options, and I agree with the clerk that in terms of once the website is set up for this, I don't see there should be significant costs of adding, because as far as the system knows, wherever the phone is, it's taken a donation from it, so I can't see that it will make a difference whether the phone is at Southill Barn, Broad Street, or on the Salt. So I think it's a good opportunity to improve our use of engagement with the cashless society, to have more events using the same technology. I think it's a very good thing.
Yes, I think we ought to consider that as we're using it in other places as well, because, you know, it's free parking, it's great, but let's have some money if we're possible.
I agree, we need to think about where else if we can get it working successfully.
You wanted to speak?
Thank you, Chair. I think Councillor Reid started off my sort of thinking in the sense of possibly maybe there's no time frames on here at the moment. I couldn't see any time frames, so that's just one issue. I don't know if you maybe got an idea, maybe a couple of pilot car parks just to see how it goes, as opposed to committing to the whole lot. And I like the idea that you may be able to expand it into other areas, but also the security angle and the location, because both South Hill Barn and say the High and Over is our car park as well, isn't it? Very exposed places. I think the signal side's probably fine because it'll all be either some sort of network or satellite or something anyway. I'm sure I don't know how which is best. I'm sure you'll be consulted on that. But maybe best if to get something off the ground, you possibly start with a pilot and then see how it goes. I don't know what you've got in mind. So and effectively, it's like losing a year's donation to set it up effectively. If you want to do on a ballpoint, if you think of it like that. So, but I think it's the way forward anyway. So thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Those are good points.
Are we sort of suggesting that, first of all, we trial it perhaps up at South Hill Barn, just a minute, and then extend it perhaps to other areas? Would be wise way forward?
I think that's exactly what's being said.
Councillor Payne.
Let's see how we go.
What's the security level on this, and would we be liable if there was a security breach?
Did you have a particular security level in mind, Councillor?
But yeah, like somebody's going to pay with their card.
Yeah.
How easy would it be to hack that before they've paid it, and somebody could then clone the card? And would we then be liable? Is there security on the software?
Well, I think that we'll obviously be making sure within the Stripe specification, if you like, what there is around security. I'm not aware of any reduction in security with them as opposed to alternatives. Clearly, as a cashless payment enabler, we would expect them to have the necessary things in place to prevent that from happening. But we'll certainly make sure that we're clear about how strong that security is.
Any other questions? Just Councillor Honeyman.
Is there anything about that? Yeah, 3D secure information. Yeah, exactly.
Thank you. I was just going to point out it's actually in 1.10 that it says Stripe shoulders the PCI compliance burden by ensuring the client never needs to handle sensitive card data.
Councillor Chair, I think there's more speakers.
Stripe, I guess they are compliant, are they?
Yeah,
yes,
that's what it's saying in the report.
Yeah. Councillor Bowman. And then Councillor Reid. I can see it.
Can I suggest then that we trial this for 6 months and then to come back and then, well, after 6 months of it starting, obviously not in 6 months' time, let's have it start running for 6 months and then it to come back and see actually how well it's doing and then whether we should actually extend it to other things.
Okay, yeah. Councillor Reid.
That's reasonable.
Thank you for permission to speak a second time. As I understand it, there's no machine involved in this. Simply, there's a piece of plastic with a QR code. Yeah. So there's nothing vulnerable. There's nothing breachable. Because literally, there would be a laminated piece of card this size with a QR code on it. I would scan it from my phone, and the rest is on my phone. So I think it's very secure, nothing to vandalise, and my phone's data protection materials take care of it, I think.
Thank you.
Is that the way it's going to work? Phone
Yes,
and an app?
that is the way it's going to work.
How would that affect people who don't have mobile phones if there are any these days?
Well, no, then obviously they need a means of making online payments to make an online payment. So they'd have to if you haven't got a phone, then you'd be having to make a cash donation.
Okay, any other questions at all? We've had an amendment that we trial this for 6 months, so we can include that in the 3 recommendations. Can we take the 3 together? Is everybody okay with that? So if somebody like to propose with the amendment for 6 months that we take the 3 recommendations, Councillor Borman. Thank you. Seconded, Councillor Meek. All those in favour? Anybody against? Any abstentions? Thank you, that's carried.
Thank you.
Right, we're getting there. Right, item 9, Members' Allowance Policy Review, page 45. It's always been the policy up to now within Seaford Town Council that members of the council do not accept any kind of remuneration for being a member of council, except that they would be entitled to draw expenses when they are working outside of the town council boundary. And I think that's really what this allowance policy is saying at the moment. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes, that's exactly it. It's saying that it's not proposing any changes.
Okay, so the purpose of the report to review the Town Council's member allowance policy, which we have to do on a regular basis, and to recommend to full council adopt the members' allowance policy as presented in report 52/21. Are there any questions on this at all? No? Yes, Councillor Borman.
Policy as it is at the moment, but I do think that the whole full council should have a discussion about whether they do want allowances. Obviously it won't be in the near future because there's no budget for it, but I do think that actually full council should be asked that question and have discussions on that. Thank you.
Okay, so what we're asked to do at the moment is to accept the policy, and then it can be brought up by it'd be brought up by any councillor to be included in the next town council or a future agenda.
Yes, councillors would be at liberty to raise it either at budget time or in fact at any time. We could do it.
Yeah, if there is no budget for it, it's true. Councillor.
This might be a cheeky question. We do have the view. It's whether councillors are offered maybe discount at the view, if that's something that could maybe be looked at.
Yeah, we can look at a range of options. As I say, I would suggest Karen probably want to do this as part of budget setting process. So we're in the budget setting meetings. We could return to this issue if councillors wish to do so.
Yep, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions at all? Okay, so I recommend to full council to adopt the members' allowance policy as presented in report 52/21. Somebody like to propose that, please? Councillor Raven, seconded. Councillor Payne, all in favour? Anybody against? Any abstentions? Okay, that's carried. Thank you very much. The next one is the Gifts and Hospitality Policy Review, which is page 57. And again, this outlines the council's policy on accepting any kind of gifts. It used to be up to £25. I don't know whether that's still in the policy. If it was below 25, you didn't need to declare it. I did read it through and I didn't see that anywhere. Yeah. Anyway. There are a couple of minor amendments to the policy. You can see in 2.2 and again in 6.3 and in 8.2. Otherwise, it's pretty much as it's been before. And it's to recommend to full council to adopt the Gifts and Hospitality Policy as presented in report 53/21. Any questions on the contents? Yes, Councillor Reid. You're all right this time.
Thank you, Chair. About 6.3, I'm just wondering about the working of the tips approach at the view. Is it a group scheme where all the tips end up in one place and they get equally divided, or can view staff have tips individually and then also the tin on the bar for tips generally? Are we talking about a tips fund that gets divided amongst all the staff, or individual tips received by different members of staff? Is it a grouping scheme, or is it what they get given they keep?
Well, as I say, that's a good question. It doesn't have an impact upon the motion or the decisions being made in this meeting. It's simply how this policy would be implemented. We can get the view, obviously that would be the view manager who makes that decision. We can get him to let councillors know the position.
As far as I'm aware, the tips go into a central fund and they're distributed equally to the staff at the moment.
Yeah, we'll get that confirmed. Right.
And it's common practice to share tips in most organisations. Some of them don't share them, but there you go. Yes, Councillor Hanneman.
Thank you very much, Chair. Following on from what we just heard, lots of organisations in the catering side, especially groups of people, put on like a 15% standard charge, so then you haven't got to worry about tips and shall we leave them a £5 or a couple of pounds, from your change. So I don't know if the wider side of this can be looked at, because just to avoid this confusion while we're sort of talking about it. So I don't know if possibly we could. I think it could be outside the scope of this, although it sort of does cover it.
Yeah, that might be something we could. Again, we can liaise with the view manager, and if we want to make changes, we'll bring them to go from the view committee for them to consider.
Thank you. So I don't think it's not really a matter if you're just buying a coffee or something, but it's the substantial stuff, isn't it? Thank you.
I think what we're trying to do there is formalise the system a little bit, but so we remain legal, which is the main thing. Okay, so. We've got to recommend to anybody else wish to speak. Okay, recommendation to full council to adopt the gifts and hospitality policy as presented with report 5321. Somebody like to propose that? Councillor Argent, seconded Councillor Borman. All in favour? Anybody against? Any abstentions? Okay, that's up to item 10. Item 11, exclusion of the press and public.